The scent of jasmine hung in the air as Everly Blackwood carefully applied her signature perfume behind her ears. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of their Boston penthouse, the morning sun cast golden reflections across the marble countertops. She glanced at her watch. 9:15 a.m. They were already running late for their weekend getaway to the Hamptons. "Thackeray, are you ready?" she called out, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. "Montgomery's already in the car with Reginald." Thackeray Blackwood emerged from his home office, phone pressed against his ear as he nodded apologetically to his wife. At 42, the pharmaceutical magnate commanded respect in boardrooms across the country, but in the presence of Everly, he was simply a man hopelessly in love with his wife of 10 years. "Jenkins, we'll continue this on Monday," he said firmly before ending the call. "Sorry, darling. Crisis averted. Blackwood Pharmaceuticals will survive the weekend without me." Everly smiled, the kind of smile that still made his heart skip after all these years together. "The world of life-saving drugs can wait. Your son has been talking about this beach trip for weeks." They descended in the private elevator to the building's underground garage where Montgomery, their 5-year-old son, was already strapped into his car seat in the back of the black Bentley, clutching his favorite stuffed shark. "Mommy, Daddy, can we go now? I want to build the biggest sandcastle ever." Montgomery's eyes sparkled with excitement. "The biggest in the Hamptons," Thackeray corrected with a wink, ruffling his son's hair. "No, Daddy, the biggest in the whole world." Montgomery stretched his arms wide, causing both parents to laugh. Everly kissed her husband briefly. "I'll take my car and stop by that bakery in Essex. I promise to bring those chocolate croissants that Dorothy loves." Thackeray frowned. "Can't we send Reginald later? I thought we'd drive together. I need to pick up my new summer reading from the bookstore too. I'll be right behind you. 2 hours, tops." She kissed Montgomery's forehead. "Be good for Daddy, little prince." "I promise, Mommy. Bring extra croissants for me." "Your wish is my command," she replied with a theatrical bow that made Montgomery giggle. As Everly pulled out of the garage in her sleek, white Mercedes, Thackeray couldn't shake a sudden uneasiness. He watched her car disappear around the corner, memorizing the flash of her red summer dress through the window. 3 hours later, Thackeray paced the deck of their Hamptons beach house, phone pressed to his ear for the 12th time. Still no answer. "Daddy, when is Mommy coming?" Montgomery asked, his sandcastle plans abandoned as he sensed his father's growing tension. "Soon, buddy. Maybe she got caught in traffic." He dialed again, the knot in his stomach tightening with each unanswered ring. The doorbell rang, and Thackeray rushed to answer it, relief washing over him. But instead of Everly's smiling face, he found 2 solemn police officers. "Mr. Blackwood?" the older officer asked, removing his hat. "Yes. What's happened?" Thackeray's voice shook. "Sir, there's been an accident on Route 27. A semi-truck lost control and collided with several vehicles. One of them was registered to Everly Blackwood." The world around Thackeray began to blur. Where is she?" "She was airlifted to Southampton Hospital. The doctors are doing everything they can, but her injuries are severe. You should come immediately." The next few hours passed in a nightmare blur. Thackeray arranged for Montgomery to stay with their neighbors, the Hendersons, before racing to the hospital. The sterile corridors seemed endless as a grim-faced doctor led him to the trauma unit. "Mr. Blackwood, your wife suffered catastrophic internal injuries. Despite our best efforts, she's not responding to treatment. Her brain activity is minimal. I'm sorry, but you should prepare yourself." Thackeray stood by Everly's bedside, unrecognizable beneath the tubes and bandages, the steady beep of monitoring equipment the only sound in the room. He held her hand, still warm but unresponsive. "Please don't leave us," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "Montgomery needs you. I need you." At 7:42 p.m., Everly Blackwood's heart stopped beating. The medical team rushed in, but Thackeray knew she was gone. He felt it, a sudden emptiness, as if part of his soul had been ripped away. Later that night, Thackeray sat on Montgomery's bed at the Hendersons, struggling to find words to explain the unexplainable to a 5-year-old. "Daddy, where's Mommy? Did she bring my croissants?" Thackeray pulled his son close, his voice breaking. "Mommy had an accident today, buddy. The doctors tried very hard to help her, but her injuries were too bad." "Is she coming home tomorrow?" "No, Montgomery. Mommy can't come home." Thackeray swallowed hard. She's gone to heaven. Like Grandpa. Yes, like Grandpa. Montgomery's small face crumpled in confusion, then devastating comprehension. His wail pierced the quiet house as Thackeray held him. Father and son united in a grief too vast to measure, their world forever altered in the space of a single day. 3 years had passed since Everly's funeral. Autumn leaves swirled across the manicured lawn of the Blackwood estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, which Thackeray had purchased shortly after the accident. He couldn't bear to live in their Boston penthouse anymore. Too many memories lingered in every corner. Thackeray stood at his office window, watching 8-year-old Montgomery kick a soccer ball across the yard with half-hearted enthusiasm. The child played alone, as usual. Since moving to Connecticut, Montgomery had struggled to make friends at his new private school, becoming increasingly withdrawn. Mr. Blackwood? Winifred Pierce, their silver-haired housekeeper, appeared at the doorway. Your conference call begins in 5 minutes. Thank you, Winifred. Thackeray didn't turn from the window. Has Montgomery eaten anything today? Just toast for breakfast. He said he wasn't hungry for lunch. Concern lined Winifred's face. I packed his favorite sandwich, but it came back untouched. Thackeray nodded distractedly, his focus already shifting to spreadsheets on his tablet. The Phase 3 trials for BX 450 start next week. The board expects quarterly projections by tomorrow. Sir, Winifred ventured carefully. Perhaps Montgomery would benefit from spending some time with you this weekend. The Metropolitan Museum has that dinosaur exhibit he's been mentioning. A flicker of guilt crossed Thackeray's face before his expression hardened. I have meetings in Chicago this weekend. The Lindell acquisition won't finalize itself. Of course, sir. Winifred retreated, her disapproval evident despite her professional demeanor. After she left, Thackeray opened his desk drawer and removed a silver-framed photograph. Everly holding newborn Montgomery, her smile radiant with maternal pride. The familiar ache bloomed in his chest. 3 years, and the pain remained razor-sharp. Work was his only refuge, the only place where he could forget, even briefly. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Blackwood, the board members are waiting. Connecting now. He replaced the photograph and closed the drawer firmly. Outside, Montgomery had abandoned his soccer ball. He sat under the sprawling oak tree where a simple stone bench commemorated his mother. Though he remembered little about her now, he visited this spot daily, running his small fingers over the engraved words, Everly Grace Blackwood, beloved wife, mother, and light of our lives. I got an A on my science project, Mom, he whispered to the empty air. Dad didn't come to the presentation. He said he had an important meeting. From the kitchen window, Winifred watched the boy with a heavy heart. She had joined the household 6 months after Everly's death, when it became clear Thackeray was incapable of managing everyday domestic matters. In that time, she'd witnessed the growing chasm between father and son. Thackeray provided Montgomery with everything money could buy, the finest education, luxurious surroundings, every material advantage. Everything except what the boy truly needed, his father's time and attention. That evening, as Winifred served dinner in the cavernous dining room, Thackeray's chair remained empty. Montgomery pushed his food around his plate in silence. Your father called, Winifred said gently. He'll be working late again. Montgomery nodded, unsurprised. Can I be excused? I have homework. You've hardly touched your dinner. I'm not hungry. Winifred hesitated, then reached into her pocket. I found something today while cleaning. I thought you might like to have it. She handed him a small, worn leather case. Montgomery opened it curiously. Inside was a delicate gold locket. When he pressed the clasp, it revealed a tiny photograph of his mother, laughing at the camera. It was in a box of your mother's things in storage, Winifred explained. Your father had everything packed away after. Montgomery stared at the picture, transfixed. She looks happy. She was, especially when she was with you. She used to sing to you every night before bed. Did you know that? Montgomery closed his eyes, straining to remember. Sometimes in dreams, he thought he could hear a soft voice singing about moonlight and stars. What songs? You Are My Sunshine was her favorite. She'd sing it while rocking you to sleep. Upstairs in his bedroom later that night, Montgomery clutched the locket and tried to imagine his mother's voice. The memory remained frustratingly out of reach, like trying to hold mist in his hands. Meanwhile, Thackeray sat alone in his downtown office, illuminated only by his computer screen. Quarterly projections and market analyses blurred before his eyes as exhaustion set in. A notification dinged on his phone, a calendar reminder for Montgomery's annual physical examination tomorrow at Bellflower Children's Hospital. He had completely forgotten. Cursing under his breath, he rescheduled 3 morning meetings. Dr. Whitford had been Montgomery's pediatrician since birth and had made a special arrangement to continue seeing the boy after their move to Connecticut. Thackeray valued the doctor's familiarity with Montgomery's medical history, especially his chronic asthma, which had worsened after Everly's death. The next morning, Montgomery sat quietly in the back seat as Reginald, their driver, navigated Manhattan traffic toward the hospital. Thackeray reviewed emails on his phone, barely acknowledging his son's presence. "Dad." Montgomery's voice was so soft that Thackeray almost missed it. Do you think I look like Mom?" The question caught Thackeray off guard. He looked up from his phone to find Montgomery studying him intently, the gold locket visible around his neck. "Where did you get that?" Thackeray asked sharply. "Winifred found it. It has Mom's picture inside." Montgomery opened the locket to show him. "Do I have her eyes?" Thackeray stared at the familiar face in the tiny photograph, pain lancing through him. "Yes," he said finally, his voice rough. "You have her eyes. And her smile sometimes." Montgomery's face brightened momentarily before falling again. "I can't remember what her voice sounded like anymore." Thackeray had no response. He turned back to his phone, but the screen had gone blurry. He blinked rapidly, clearing his vision before his son could notice the tears. As Reginald pulled up to the hospital entrance, Thackeray composed himself. Another day, another obligation to fulfill, another moment to get through without falling apart. He had rebuilt his life around routines and responsibilities that kept the grief at bay. It wasn't living, not really, but it was all he could manage. For now, it would have to be enough. Bellflower Children's Hospital gleamed in the morning sunlight, its modern glass facade reflecting the clear blue October sky. Inside, the pediatric wing bustled with activity as nurses in colorful scrubs moved efficiently between examination rooms. Thackeray checked his watch impatiently while Montgomery flipped through a dog-eared copy of National Geographic Kids in the waiting area. "Montgomery Blackwood?" called a nurse Thackeray didn't recognize, consulting her clipboard. They followed her to the examination room, where she took Montgomery's vitals with practiced efficiency. "Dr. Whitford will be with you shortly," she said with a smile. "He's running a bit behind this morning." Thackeray nodded curtly, already pulling out his phone. "Fine. How long?" "About 15 minutes, Mr. Blackwood. We have a new nurse practitioner who'll be assisting today as part of our expanded pediatric respiratory team." The nurse paused at the door. "Dr. Whitford mentioned Montgomery's asthma has been troublesome lately." 2 attacks in the past month, Thackeray confirmed without looking up. The school nurse called during the last one. After the nurse left, Montgomery swung his legs from the examination table, the paper crinkling beneath him. "Dad, can we get ice cream after this?" "We'll see," Thackeray replied, the standard non-committal answer he gave whenever he didn't want to engage. His phone buzzed with an incoming call from the office. "I need to take this. Sit quietly." Thackeray stepped into the hallway, immediately absorbed in conversation about production delays at their Milwaukee facility. Minutes passed as he paced the corridor, oblivious to the activity around him. "Mr. Blackwood?" Dr. Whitford's familiar voice interrupted his call. "We're ready for Montgomery now." "I'll call you back," Thackeray told his production manager, ending the call. "Sorry, doctor. Important business matter." Dr. Whitford, a grandfatherly man with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses, gave him a measured look. "Of course. Shall we?" They entered the examination room where Montgomery remained seated on the table, now holding a stethoscope that someone had apparently given him to play with. "Hello, young man," Dr. Whitford said warmly. "I hear you've been having some trouble breathing again." Montgomery nodded solemnly. "At soccer practice mostly. My chest gets tight." "Well, we're going to figure out how to fix that. I've brought a specialist to help us today." Dr. Whitford turned toward the door. "Ah, here she is now." A woman in a white coat entered, her auburn hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She was looking down at a tablet, reviewing notes. "This is Nurse Practitioner Haversham, our new respiratory specialist," Dr. Whitford began. Montgomery's eyes widened. "Daddy, that nurse looks just like Mommy," he exclaimed, pointing at the woman who had just raised her head at the sound of the child's voice. Thackeray turned, the blood draining from his face. For a moment, he forgot to breathe. The woman standing before him could have been Everly's twin. The same heart-shaped face, the same green eyes with flecks of gold, the same delicate nose and full lips. The only difference was a small scar on her chin that Everly had never had. The room spun around him. He gripped the edge of a nearby counter to steady himself, knuckles white. "Mr. Blackwood? Are you all right?" Dr. Whitford's concerned voice seemed to come from far away. The woman, Nurse Haversham, looked equally stunned, her eyes fixed on Thackeray with an expression of confusion. "I'm fine," Thackeray managed, though his voice sounded strange even to his own ears. "Just stood up too quickly. Dad." Montgomery slid off the table, worry etched across his young face. "Your face is all white." Nurse Haversham recovered first, extending her hand professionally despite the palpable tension in the room. "Willow Haversham. I specialize in pediatric respiratory conditions. I'll be assisting Dr. Whitford with Montgomery's care plan." Her voice was different from Everly's, slightly deeper, with a hint of a West Coast accent. Thackeray stared at her outstretched hand as if it might burn him. After an awkward moment, he shook it briefly. "Thackeray Blackwood." An uncomfortable silence filled the room until Dr. Whitford cleared his throat. "Well then, let's have a look at those lungs, shall we, Montgomery?" The examination proceeded with professional detachment, though Thackeray couldn't tear his gaze from Willow Haversham. She moved with efficient grace, listening to Montgomery's breathing, checking his peak flow measurements, asking him questions about his symptoms in a gentle, engaging manner that soon had the boy responding comfortably despite the strange atmosphere. "I'm recommending a new inhaler protocol," Dr. Whitford explained once the examination was complete. "Nurse Haversham will demonstrate the proper technique." Willow approached Montgomery with a sample inhaler. "This one works a little differently from your old one. Let me show you." As she bent toward his son, Thackeray noticed Montgomery studying her face with fascination. The boy reached up suddenly, touching the small scar on her chin. "What happened there?" he asked with childlike directness. Willow smiled, seemingly unperturbed by the question. "Bicycle accident when I was about your age. I wasn't wearing a helmet, which was not smart at all. Mom always said I had to wear a helmet," Montgomery replied. "Dad says the same thing now." "Your mom was right," Willow said softly. "Very right." Thackeray's jaw tightened. "We should go. I have a meeting at noon." Dr. Whitford frowned. "Mr. Blackwood, we still need to discuss Montgomery's treatment plan. Perhaps we could schedule a follow-up appointment for later this week." "Fine. Whatever's necessary." Thackeray was already gathering his coat, unable to remain in the room with this ghost from his past any longer. "I'll personally oversee Montgomery's care," Willow said, handing Thackeray a business card. "Please call if you have any questions about the new medication regimen." Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and Thackeray recoiled as if shocked. Willow's expression registered hurt before shifting back to professional neutrality. "Thank you," he said stiffly, pocketing the card without looking at it. As they left the hospital, Montgomery turned back to wave at Willow, who stood watching them from the entrance. She waved back, a sad smile playing at her lips. "She's nice, Dad," Montgomery said as they climbed into the waiting car. "And she really does look like Mom." Thackeray stared straight ahead, his hands trembling slightly. "She's nothing like your mother." "But she—" "Enough, Montgomery." The sharpness in his voice made his son flinch. Thackeray immediately regretted his tone, but couldn't bring himself to apologize. Back at the office, Thackeray canceled his remaining meetings and locked his door, claiming illness. He sat at his desk, Willow Haversham's business card between his fingers. His mind raced with questions and suspicions. The resemblance was too perfect, too uncanny to be coincidence. By evening, he had made a decision. He reached for his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "Martinez Investigations," answered a gruff voice. "This is Thackeray Blackwood. I need your services again." "Mr. Blackwood, it's been a while. What can I do for you?" Thackeray took a deep breath. "I need everything you can find on a woman named Willow Haversham. She recently joined the staff at Bellflower Children's Hospital in Manhattan. I want to know where she came from, her background, her connections, everything. May I ask what this is regarding?" Thackeray stared at the photograph of Everly on his desk. Let's just say she bears an unsettling resemblance to someone I used to know. Thackeray stared at the blinking cursor on his laptop screen, the quarterly report forgotten as his mind drifted back to Willow Haversham for the 100th time that week. 2 days had passed since the hospital visit, and he'd canceled Montgomery's follow-up appointment twice already, rescheduling with another doctor. His office phone rang, jarring him from his thoughts. "Mr. Blackwood," his assistant's voice came through the speaker. "Raymond Martinez is here to see you. Send him in." Thackeray straightened his tie and closed his laptop. The door opened to reveal a compact, muscular man in his 50s, dressed in an understated gray suit. Raymond Martinez had been Thackeray's go-to investigator for sensitive corporate matters in the past. His discretion was legendary, his results unparalleled. "Mr. Blackwood." Martinez nodded professionally, declining the offered handshake as usual. "Thank you for coming so quickly. Have a seat." Martinez slid a manila envelope across the desk. "Preliminary findings on Willow Haversham. I'll continue digging, but I thought you'd want to see this now." Thackeray opened the envelope with carefully controlled movements, though his heart hammered in his chest. Inside were surveillance photos of Willow, entering the hospital, shopping at a grocery store, jogging in Central Park, along with printed documents. "She moved to New York 3 months ago from Seattle," Martinez began. "Rented a 1-bedroom apartment in Murray Hill. Single, no children, no criminal record, not even a parking ticket. Graduated from University of Washington with honors, specialized in pediatric nursing with additional certification in respiratory therapy." "What about family connections? Her background? That's where it gets interesting," Martinez said, leaning forward slightly. "Records show she was raised by a single mother, Diana Haversham, who died last year from breast cancer. Father unknown, at least officially. No siblings on record. But here's the thing. I can't find any records of her existence before age 7. Thackeray's eyes narrowed. "Meaning, either records were lost or deliberately obscured. Not uncommon in adoption cases or family court situations. I'm still working on getting access to sealed records, but it'll take time. I want everything, Martinez. Leave no stone unturned." The investigator studied Thackeray's face. "May I ask why this woman has caught your interest? Is this a corporate security matter?" Thackeray hesitated, then reached for a framed photo on his desk, turning it to face Martinez. "This is my late wife, Everly." Martinez's professional demeanor cracked momentarily as he glanced between the photograph and the surveillance images of Willow. "The resemblance is remarkable. Beyond remarkable. It's impossible. Identical strangers do exist, Mr. Blackwood. Genetic doppelgangers. This is different." Thackeray cut him off. "My son recognized it immediately. She's inserted herself into my son's medical care out of nowhere. I want to know why." Martinez nodded, his expression returning to neutral. "I'll keep digging. If there's a connection to your family, I'll find it." After the investigator left, Thackeray canceled his remaining meetings and drove home early, an unprecedented occurrence. He found Montgomery in the backyard with Winifred, attempting to fly a kite in the gentle autumn breeze. "Dad," Montgomery called out in surprise. "You're home. I thought we might spend some time together," Thackeray replied, trying to sound casual despite the strangeness of the situation. Winifred raised an eyebrow, but said nothing as she retreated to the house, leaving father and son alone. "Montgomery," Thackeray began, kneeling to his son's level. "I want to ask you about the nurse we met at Dr. Whitford's office." The boy's face brightened. "Nurse Willow? The one who looks like Mom?" "Yes. Why did you think she looked like Mom?" Montgomery considered this seriously. "Her eyes are the same, and her smile, and the way her nose crinkles when she laughs. But Mom didn't have that mark on her chin." Thackeray frowned. "She laughed when you were with her?" "When I told her about my science project, the one about lung capacity. She said I was very smart, just like—" Montgomery trailed off. "Just like what?" "Just like she expected," Montgomery finished, though Thackeray sensed this wasn't what his son had initially meant to say. That night, after Montgomery had gone to bed, Thackeray sat in his study, scrolling through old photographs of Everly on his tablet. Each image was like a knife to his heart, yet he couldn't stop. The resemblance between his late wife and Willow Haversham was undeniable. The shape of their eyes, the curve of their cheekbones, even the way they tilted their heads when listening intently. His phone buzzed with a text from Martinez. "Found something. Calling now." Seconds later, his phone rang. "What is it?" Thackeray answered without preamble. "I tracked down an old neighbor of Diana Haversham's from when Willow was a child," Martinez explained. "Interesting story. Apparently, Diana moved to Seattle when Willow was about 6 or 7. Before that, they lived in Portland." The neighbor recalled Diana mentioning once that she had to leave everything behind after a bitter divorce. Reading between the lines, it sounds like she might have been fleeing with the child. Thackeray's grip tightened on the phone. "Anything else?" The neighbor mentioned Diana was extremely protective of Willow, almost paranoid. Homeschooled her for years before finally enrolling her in public school. And here's the kicker. Willow apparently didn't know her real birthday. The neighbor overheard an argument once where Willow was upset because her mother kept changing the date they celebrated. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything yet, Mr. Blackwood. Just reporting what I found. But it does raise questions about Willow's true identity." After ending the call, Thackeray poured himself a scotch, his mind racing with possibilities. Could Willow be an imposter, surgically altered to resemble Everly? A con artist targeting his wealth? The scenario seemed far-fetched, yet the alternative, that this woman who looked identical to his dead wife had coincidentally become his son's nurse, seemed equally implausible. The next morning, he made a decision. Despite his reservations, he called Bellflower Hospital and rescheduled Montgomery's follow-up appointment with Nurse Haversham. If this woman was trying to insert herself into their lives, he would confront her directly. 2 days later, Thackeray sat stone-faced in the examination room while Willow checked Montgomery's breathing with a stethoscope. This time, he watched her every move with a detective's eye, noting how Montgomery responded to her with unusual openness. "Your peak flow readings are much better today," Willow said to Montgomery with a warm smile. "You've been using the new inhaler correctly. Good job. Dad helped me remember when to use it," Montgomery replied, casting a hopeful glance at his father. Willow looked surprised. "That's wonderful." "Ms. Haversham," Thackeray interrupted, "may I speak with you privately when you're finished?" A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. "Of course, Mr. Blackwood." After completing Montgomery's examination, Willow arranged for a nurse to take the boy to the playroom while they talked. Once alone, Thackeray closed the door and faced her directly. "I'll be blunt, Miss Haversham. Who are you, really?" Willow blinked, taken aback by his aggressive tone. "I'm not sure I understand the question." "I'm a nurse practitioner specializing in—" "You know exactly what I mean," Thackeray cut her off. "Your resemblance to my late wife is beyond coincidence. I want to know why you've targeted my family." Color drained from Willow's face. "Targeted? Mr. Blackwood, I haven't targeted anyone. I was assigned to Montgomery's case because of my specialty in pediatric asthma. And it's just happenstance that you look identical to Everly? That you moved to New York right before appearing in our lives." Willow's professional composure cracked. "I don't know what you're implying, but I know your records before age 7 are mysteriously absent," Thackeray pressed on. "I know your mother fled with you across state lines. I know you've been lying about your identity." Anger flashed in Willow's eyes. "You've been investigating me? That's completely inappropriate and possibly illegal." She took a steadying breath. "Mr. Blackwood, I understand your son's comment about my resemblance to his mother was startling. It was for me too. But I assure you, any similarity is purely coincidental. I don't believe in coincidences of this magnitude." Willow straightened her shoulders. "I'm sorry for your loss, truly, but I'm not responsible for your grief or your suspicions. If you're uncomfortable with me treating Montgomery, I can arrange for him to see another specialist." "That won't be necessary," Thackeray replied coldly, "because we'll be taking Montgomery's care elsewhere entirely. Stay away from my son, Ms. Haversham. Whatever game you're playing, it ends now." As he turned to leave, Willow called after him, her voice trembling slightly. "Mr. Blackwood, Montgomery's health shouldn't suffer because of your unfounded accusations. At least let me transfer his records properly." Thackeray paused at the door. "I'll have my assistant coordinate the transfer. This is the last time we'll speak." He collected Montgomery from the playroom, ignoring his son's confused protests about leaving early. As they walked toward the exit, Thackeray glanced back to see Willow watching them from the nurse's station, her expression unreadable but her eyes glistening with what might have been tears. The rain pounded against the windows of Thackeray's study as he stared at the documents spread across his desk. 3 weeks had passed since his confrontation with Willow Haversham, and Martinez had finally delivered his complete findings. The thick folder contained birth certificates, newspaper clippings, and court records, fragments of a puzzle Thackeray couldn't yet assemble. His phone rang, displaying Martinez's number. "Did you review the files?" the investigator asked without greeting. "Yes," Thackeray replied. "But I don't understand all the implications. That's why I'm calling. There's more information too sensitive to include in writing." Martinez paused. "I need to see you in person." An hour later, Martinez sat across from Thackeray in the study, rainwater still dripping from his coat. "What I found changes everything," Martinez began, his usual professional detachment replaced with genuine astonishment. "Willow Haversham is not who she appears to be." Thackeray leaned forward. "I knew it. She's an imposter targeting my—" "No," Martinez interrupted. "It's more complicated than that. Her real name is Audrey Haversham. And according to the sealed family court records I managed to access, she is Everly's identical twin sister." The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the ticking of the antique clock on the mantel. "That's impossible," Thackeray finally whispered. "Everly didn't have a sister. She didn't know she had one. The twins were separated during a bitter divorce when they were 6 years old. Their father, Jonathan Green, took Everly to Boston, while their mother, Diana, fled with Audrey to the West Coast. Diana later legally changed Audrey's name to Willow and her own surname from Green to Haversham. Why would parents separate twins? Thackeray asked, struggling to process this revelation. The divorce records suggest extreme animosity. Jonathan Green was wealthy, controlling, and used his influence to gain full custody of one child. Diana, fearing she'd lose both daughters, essentially kidnapped Audrey and disappeared. The court documents show Jonathan hired private investigators for years but never found them. Thackeray rubbed his temples. Everly never mentioned any of this. She likely didn't remember. 6 is young enough that memories fade, especially with adults reinforcing new narratives. Jonathan Green remarried quickly and forbade any mention of Diana or the stolen child. He raised Everly as an only child. And the other mother, Diana, lived in perpetual fear of being found. She moved frequently, changed their identities, homeschooled Audrey for years. She apparently told the girl that her father had been abusive and that they fled for their safety. The sealed records include psychiatric evaluations suggesting Diana developed paranoid tendencies, possibly due to the stress of their situation. Thackeray sat back, attempting to absorb the implications. "So when Diana died last year?" "Exactly," Martinez nodded. While going through her mother's belongings, Willow, or Audrey, found hidden documents, including her original birth certificate and photographs of her as an infant with her identical twin sister. According to her recent internet search history, she's been trying to track down her sister ever since. But how did she end up as Montgomery's nurse? That can't be coincidence. It wasn't, Martinez confirmed. Once she discovered her sister had married into the Blackwood family, she searched for information and found news articles about Everly's accident. Devastated to learn her twin had died, she apparently became fixated on connecting with the family she never knew existed. She specifically applied for the position at Bellflower because Montgomery was a patient there. Thackeray's hands clenched into fists. "She manipulated her way into my son's life under false pretenses." "Perhaps," Martinez said carefully, "but her background in respiratory care is genuine. Her credentials are impeccable. She seems professionally qualified for the position she holds." "That doesn't excuse her deception," Thackeray snapped. "She should have been honest about who she was. Would you have believed her without proof? A stranger claiming to be your dead wife's long-lost twin sister." The question hung in the air between them. Thackeray knew the answer. He would have dismissed such a claim as a cruel hoax or elaborate con. "There's one more thing," Martinez added, pulling a final document from his briefcase. "The scar on her chin. It happened when she was 12. Bicycle accident, just as she told your son. The medical record notes that she required 7 stitches. Thackeray stared at the report, suddenly remembering how gently Willow had spoken to Montgomery, the natural way she'd connected with him. Not manipulation, perhaps, but genuine affection for her nephew. "What will you do now?" Martinez asked, gathering his materials. Thackeray didn't answer immediately. The rain had stopped, and watery sunlight filtered through the clouds outside. "I need time to think." After Martinez left, Thackeray retreated to the kitchen, pouring himself a stiff drink. He found himself staring at Montgomery's school photograph on the refrigerator. The boy had Everly's eyes that, he now realized, Willow shared as well. "Daddy." Montgomery's voice startled him. The boy stood in the doorway in pajamas, clutching a dog-eared book. "Can you read to me tonight?" "Of course," Thackeray said softly, setting aside his untouched drink. Later, after tucking Montgomery in, Thackeray sat alone with the folder of Martinez's findings, including a current address for Willow Haversham in Manhattan. Tomorrow, he would confront her again, this time armed with the truth about who she really was and why she had entered their lives. Willow's apartment building in Murray Hill was modest but well-maintained, a far cry from the luxury Thackeray was accustomed to. He sat in his parked car across the street, Martinez's file on the passenger seat, gathering his resolve. After a sleepless night wrestling with the revelation, he decided to face her directly. The lobby attendant barely glanced at him as he mentioned Willow's name and apartment number. "She's expecting you?" "Yes," Thackeray lied smoothly. Moments later, he stood before apartment 507, hesitating before knocking firmly. The door opened to reveal Willow in casual weekend clothes, jeans, and a simple blue sweater that brought out the gold flecks in her green eyes. Everly's eyes. "Mr. Blackwood?" Surprise and wariness flashed across her face. "How did you find my address?" "May I come in?" he asked, ignoring her question. She hesitated, then stepped aside. Briefly, the apartment was small but neat, with medical textbooks stacked on a coffee table and framed botanical prints on the walls. Nothing ostentatious or suspicious. Nothing to suggest she was anything other than what she claimed to be, a dedicated healthcare professional. "I know who you are," Thackeray said without preamble, turning to face her. "Or should I call you Audrey?" All color drained from Willow's face. She gripped the back of a chair for support. How did I find out?" Thackeray's voice hardened. "I had you investigated. Quite thoroughly. You had no right." "I had every right," he cut her off. "You inserted yourself into my son's life under false pretenses. You deliberately sought out a position at his hospital, manipulated your way into becoming his nurse." "That's not true." Willow's composure cracked. "Yes, I learned about Everly, about my sister, after my mother died. Yes, I discovered she had married you and had a son. But my specialization in pediatric respiratory care is genuine. I applied at Bellflower because it's the best children's hospital in the city. And Montgomery just happened to be assigned to you? A convenient coincidence." Willow sank into a chair. "I requested the assignment," she admitted quietly. "When I saw his name on the patient list, I needed to see him, to see a part of her. Why didn't you simply introduce yourself? Explain who you were. And say what? Hello, I'm your dead wife's identical twin sister she never knew existed?" Bitter tears filled her eyes. "Would you have believed me without proof? Or would you have assumed I was delusional or running a scam?" Thackeray had no answer. The same question Martinez had posed. "I needed time," Willow continued, "to figure out the right approach." When Montgomery recognized the resemblance so immediately, her voice broke. "I was terrified and amazed all at once. I hadn't expected that." "So you continued the deception." "I never lied about who I am now. Willow is the name I've used my entire conscious life. I am a nurse practitioner. Everything in my professional background is legitimate. But you concealed your connection to Everly." "I was going to tell you," she insisted, "once I found the right moment." Thackeray laughed bitterly. "The right moment to announce you're the sister of my dead wife? When exactly would that be?" Willow rose suddenly, disappearing into another room. She returned with a small wooden box, which she placed on the coffee table between them. "After my mother died last year, I found this hidden in her closet." She opened the box to reveal old photographs, documents, and letters. "My entire life was built on lies. The father I was told was abusive never existed. The childhood history my mother recounted was fiction. Even my birthday was false." Thackeray reluctantly examined the contents. A birth certificate for Audrey Elizabeth Green, born 6 minutes after Everly Grace Green. A faded photograph of identical infant girls. Court documents detailing a custody dispute. "My mother wasn't evil," Willow said softly. "Just damaged. Desperate. She convinced herself that fleeing with me was the only way to protect me from my father's influence. She created an elaborate mythology to justify what she'd done. And your sister paid the price, Thackeray said coldly. Everly grew up without her twin, without knowing part of herself was missing. Willow flinched. Don't you think I live with that knowledge every day now? That I missed a lifetime with her? That I discovered her existence only after it was too late? The raw pain in her voice was unmistakable, mirroring the grief Thackeray had carried since Everly's death. For the first time, he saw beyond his suspicions to the wounded woman before him. Not a manipulator, but someone as broken by loss as he was. I'll resign from Bellflower, Willow said quietly. Transfer Montgomery's care to another specialist. You'll never have to see me again. The words hung between them. Thackeray should have felt relieved, but instead, an inexplicable hollowness spread through his chest at the thought of her disappearing from their lives. Montgomery has been asking about you, he admitted reluctantly. He doesn't understand why we changed doctors again. He's a remarkable boy, Willow smiled sadly. He has her smile. And her compassion, Thackeray added, surprising himself with the admission. As he turned to leave, Willow called after him. I never meant to cause pain. I just wanted to know the family I never had. Thackeray paused at the door, unable to face her. I'll need time. I understand. Walking back to his car, Thackeray felt as though the ground beneath him had shifted, the world he thought he knew irrevocably altered by the truth of Willow's existence. What this meant for him, for Montgomery, he couldn't yet comprehend. But the absolute certainty of his anger had crumbled, leaving only confusion in its wake. 3 weeks passed with no contact between Thackeray and Willow. Despite his promise to consider the situation, Thackeray had buried himself in work, avoiding the emotional reckoning that awaited. He'd transferred Montgomery's care to another specialist at Columbia Presbyterian, though the boy continued asking about Nurse Willow with disarming frequency. On a rainy Thursday evening, Thackeray was reviewing acquisition documents in his home office when Winifred burst in without knocking, something she'd never done before. Mr. Blackwood, it's Montgomery. His breathing, her voice trembled. The school nurse called. They've taken him to Bellflower. The world tilted sideways. What happened? Severe asthma attack during indoor recess. His inhaler wasn't helping. The ambulance is bringing him to emergency now. The drive to the hospital passed in a blur of panic and prayer. Thackeray gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white, barely observing traffic laws as rain pelted the windshield. At Bellflower's emergency entrance, Thackeray sprinted through the automatic doors. My son, he gasped to the receptionist. Montgomery Blackwood, brought by ambulance, asthma attack. She directed him to pediatric urgent care, where he found Dr. Whitford waiting. Montgomery is stabilized, the doctor assured him quickly. It was a severe attack, but he's responding well to treatment. Where is he? Thackeray demanded. Observation room 3. But Mr. Blackwood, Dr. Whitford hesitated. Nurse Haversham was on duty when he arrived. Given her familiarity with his case, she's attending to him now. Thackeray froze. I specifically requested she not be involved in his care. This was an emergency situation. She recognized his condition immediately and implemented the treatment protocol that worked for him previously. The doctor's tone was gentle but firm. Montgomery's been asking for her, and for you. Swallowing his objections, Thackeray followed Dr. Whitford to a treatment room where Montgomery lay in a hospital bed, an oxygen mask covering his small face. Beside him sat Willow, monitoring his vitals while telling him a story that had the boy smiling despite his obvious distress. Dad, Montgomery's voice was weak but relieved. Thackeray rushed to his son's bedside, embracing him carefully around the medical equipment. I'm here, buddy. I'm here now. Willow stood, professional demeanor firmly in place. His oxygen levels are improving, but we'll need to keep him overnight for observation. Thank you. Thackeray managed, the words feeling inadequate. I'll give you some privacy, she said, moving toward the door. No, stay. Montgomery protested, reaching for her hand. You didn't finish the story about the dragon. Willow glanced at Thackeray, seeking permission. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded slightly. I'd like to hear about your treatment plan anyway. While Montgomery dozed between them, Willow explained the adjustments she'd made to his medication. His condition has changed since I last saw him. We need to be more aggressive with preventative measures. You're certain this approach will work better? Nothing's certain with pediatric asthma. But yes, I believe this gives him the best chance of managing his symptoms without limiting his activities. They lapsed into silence, both watching Montgomery's chest rise and fall more easily now. "He called for you," Thackeray said quietly, when they were bringing him in. The paramedics noted it in their report. Willow's eyes glistened. "He's a special child. He keeps your business card in his treasure box, along with the seashell Everly found for him at Cape Cod, and the locket with her picture." "Mr. Blackwood, Thackeray," he corrected, surprising himself. "Thackeray," she acknowledged. "I meant what I said before. I never intended to disrupt your lives. If my presence is too painful, it is painful," he admitted, "but perhaps necessary." As the night deepened, they remained by Montgomery's bedside. During the quiet hours, Willow shared fragments of her childhood, Seattle rainstorms, her mother's garden, her early interest in medicine born from managing her own childhood asthma. Everly was allergic to peanuts. Thackeray volunteered unexpectedly. "Deathly so. I wonder if you share that." "I do," Willow confirmed. "Found out the hard way at a birthday party when I was 8. Is that something genetic?" "Identical twins often share allergies," he mused. "What else, I wonder, did you share without knowing?" The conversation flowed more easily after that. Thackeray spoke of Everly's love of classical music, her terrible cooking, her passion for marine conservation. With each revelation, Willow discovered pieces of the sister she'd never known, occasionally recognizing shared traits, the same dislike of cilantro, the same tendency to hum while concentrating. Near dawn, Montgomery stirred and opened his eyes. "Is it morning?" "Almost, champ," Thackeray answered, stroking his son's hair. "Can Nurse Willow come home with us?" the boy asked drowsily. "She tells better stories than you, Dad." Thackeray laughed softly, the first genuine laugh Willow had heard from him. "We'll see." Later that morning, as Montgomery's discharge papers were being prepared, Willow found Thackeray alone in the hospital cafeteria, staring into a cup of untouched coffee. "He's doing much better," she assured him, sitting across from him. "His lung function tests are almost back to baseline." Thackeray nodded, then looked directly at her. "I've been unfair to you. You were protecting your son. I understand that." "Not just that," he admitted. "Seeing you, it was like seeing a ghost. All the grief I tried to bury came flooding back. I can't imagine how unsettling it must have been." "It wasn't just unsettling," Thackeray said quietly. "It was terrifying. Because for a moment, looking at you that first day, something inside me hoped, impossibly, irrationally, that she had somehow come back." Willow's expression softened with compassion. "I'm not her, Thackeray. I can never be her. I know that now." He reached across the table, hesitantly touching her hand. "But you are family. Montgomery's family. Perhaps the only living connection to his mother left in this world." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying perhaps we should find a way forward. For Montgomery's sake, if nothing else." As morning light streamed through the hospital windows, illuminating dust motes in golden shafts, something shifted between them. Not forgiveness exactly, nor acceptance, but the first fragile bridge across the chasm that had separated them. Montgomery's recovery would require follow-up appointments, a revised treatment plan, ongoing monitoring, all legitimate reasons for Willow to remain in their lives. But beyond medical necessity lay a deeper truth neither was ready to acknowledge, that in finding each other, they had each recovered a piece of what they'd lost when Everly died. She, the sister she never knew. He, the connection to the woman he'd loved and lost too soon. 1 year later, the gardens of the Blackwood estate in Greenwich bloomed with white roses and lilies. Workers bustled about, arranging chairs in neat rows facing an elegant white pergola entwined with climbing wisteria. Today, the property would host its first celebration since Everly's death. In the master bedroom, Thackeray adjusted his tie for the third time, hands trembling slightly. At 46, he had never expected to find himself in this position again. A knock sounded at the door. "Dad," Montgomery, now 9, peeked in, already dressed in his miniature gray suit. "Ms. Winifred says it's almost time." Thackeray smiled at his son. "How do I look?" "Nervous," Montgomery answered with disarming honesty. "But good. And you look very handsome." Thackeray knelt to straighten the boy's bow tie. "Are you ready for your big responsibility?" Montgomery nodded solemnly, patting the pocket containing the wedding rings. "I won't lose them, I promise." "I know you won't." Thackeray rested his hands on his son's shoulders. "You understand what today means, right? Things will be different." "Good different," Montgomery said with certainty. Like when we were all together at Christmas, and Aunt Willow made those cookies shaped like dinosaurs. The past year had transformed their lives in ways Thackeray could never have anticipated. After Montgomery's hospitalization, Willow had remained his primary care provider, her visits gradually extending beyond medical checkups to dinners, weekend outings, and eventually, holiday celebrations. The transition had been awkward at first, conversations carefully avoiding certain topics, silent moments laden with unspoken comparisons. But Montgomery had bridged the gap between them, his unfiltered joy at having Willow in his life wearing down Thackeray's reservations. He watched his son flourish in her presence, opening up in ways he hadn't since Everly's death. And somewhere along the way, Thackeray found himself looking forward to Willow's visits as well, appreciating her quick wit, her compassionate insight, her ability to draw him out of himself. When had admiration turned to affection, and affection to something deeper? Thackeray couldn't pinpoint the moment. Perhaps it was the afternoon they'd spent sorting through Everly's belongings together, finally ready to pack away some of the past. Or the night Montgomery had a nightmare, and they'd sat together on the boy's bed, Willow singing the same lullaby Everly once had, though she couldn't have known it. "It's time, sir," Reginald announced from the doorway. "The guests are seated." Downstairs, 50 close friends and family members had gathered for the intimate ceremony. As Thackeray took his place beneath the pergola, he caught Martinez's eye in the second row. The investigator gave him a subtle nod of approval. Their professional relationship had evolved into friendship after Martinez's revelations had inadvertently given Thackeray a second chance at happiness. The string quartet began playing, and all heads turned as Willow appeared at the garden path. In her simple ivory gown, hair adorned with tiny white flowers, she took Thackeray's breath away. Not because she resembled Everly, though of course she did, but because she was uniquely, wonderfully herself. The woman who had healed both him and Montgomery through her own strength, patience, and love. Montgomery grinned broadly as she approached, giving her a thumbs up that made the assembled guests chuckle. When she reached Thackeray, her eyes met his with a mixture of joy and solemnity. "Ready?" she whispered. "For everything," he answered, taking her hands in his. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt. They had written their own vows, careful acknowledgments of the past woven with promises for the future. When the time came, Montgomery proudly presented the rings, beaming with importance. "These rings symbolize a circle without end," the officiant said, "a continuation of love that transcends even our understanding." As Thackeray slipped the band onto Willow's finger, he felt a profound sense of rightness. Not replacement or substitution, but a new chapter, unexpected yet somehow meant to be. At the reception afterward, guests mingled on the expansive lawn, raising glasses to the unlikely union. Montgomery darted between tables, proudly introducing Willow as "my new mom," but also "my aunt." "It's complicated." During a quiet moment, Willow found Thackeray watching their son from the edge of the dance floor. "Happy?" she asked, slipping her arm through his. "Beyond what I thought possible again," he admitted. "Though part of me still feels guilty," she finished when he hesitated. "I know. Sometimes I wonder what she would think of all this." "She would approve," Thackeray said with surprising certainty. "Everly always wanted Montgomery to have a family filled with love, and she would have wanted you to know the truth about your past." As the evening progressed, Montgomery approached them with unusual seriousness. "I have something to show you. Both of you." He led them to a quiet corner of the garden, pulling the familiar gold locket from beneath his shirt collar. "Remember when Winifred gave this to me? I always thought it just had Mom's picture inside." "It does," Thackeray confirmed, puzzled. "No, look closer." Montgomery opened the locket, angling it toward them. "See? There are two babies." Thackeray and Willow leaned in, stunned. The tiny photograph indeed showed two identical infants, lying side by side in a hospital bassinet, their tiny fingers touching. "How did you notice this?" Willow asked, voice trembling. "When you showed me your baby pictures at Christmas, I realized they looked the same." Montgomery's expression was earnest. "Do you think Mom knew? About you being her sister?" "Perhaps not consciously," Willow said gently. "But somehow, she kept this picture all those years. Maybe deep down, she remembered. Like she was waiting for us to find each other," Montgomery suggested with a child's beautiful simplicity. Later that night, After the guests had departed and Montgomery was asleep, Thackeray and Willow stood on the terrace, gazing at the star-filled sky. "Do you believe in fate?" Willow asked suddenly. Thackeray considered the question. "I didn't used to. I believed in what I could control, what I could build with my own hands. And now I believe some connections are too powerful to be severed permanently, not even by death." He turned to face her. "What you and Everly shared as twins, what Montgomery recognized in you instantly. Those bonds exist beyond our understanding." Willow leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "Not a replacement," she murmured. "A continuation. A family restored in ways we never imagined possible." Above them, a shooting star traced a brilliant path across the night sky. Neither made a wish. They had already received more than they had ever dared hope for. The pain of the past would never fully disappear, but it had transformed into something new, a bridge rather than a barrier, connecting what was lost to what had been found. Inside the house, Montgomery slept peacefully, the locket clutched in his hand, tangible proof that some bonds transcend time, distance, and even death itself. In his dreams, two identical women smiled at him with the same loving eyes, their hands joined across the divide that had separated them in life, finally made whole in the family they now shared. 5 years later, the Blackwood family estate in Greenwich had transformed from a place of solitary grief to a vibrant home filled with laughter and new life. The sprawling property, once eerily quiet, now echoed with children's voices and the comfortable sounds of a bustling household. Montgomery, 14 and growing taller by the day, sat cross-legged on the lawn helping his 4-year-old twin sisters, Emma and Eleanor, build an elaborate fairy garden beneath the oak tree where the memorial bench for Everly once stood. The bench remained, but flowering vines now softened its edges, and the surrounding area had been transformed into a memorial garden that celebrated life rather than mourned its loss. "You have to put the door facing east," Montgomery instructed Eleanor seriously as she placed a tiny handcrafted door against a tree root. "That's how the fairies know they're welcome." "Who told you that?" Eleanor demanded, her auburn curls, so like her mother's, catching the late afternoon sunlight. "Mom did," Montgomery replied without hesitation, and both he and the twins knew he meant Everly. In their household, there was Mom and Mama Willow, distinctions that came naturally and were honored with reverence rather than confusion. From the terrace, Willow watched them while gently rocking 3-month-old Thomas in her arms. The baby boy had Thackeray's strong chin and thoughtful eyes, a new combination of their blended genetic heritage. "They're plotting fairy mischief again," Thackeray observed, joining her with 2 glasses of iced tea. At 51, silver had begun to thread through his dark hair, but the haunted expression that had once dominated his features had long since been replaced by the relaxed confidence of a man at peace with his past. "Montgomery has become quite the storyteller," Willow smiled, accepting the drink. "Yesterday he told the girls that moonbeams are actually fairy highways. Wonder where he gets that imagination," Thackeray mused, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. Their journey from antagonists to co-parents to spouses had not been without challenges. The first year of their marriage had been a delicate balance, navigating public opinions, well-meaning but often uncomfortable questions, and their own complex emotions. There had been nights when Thackeray had awakened crying out Everly's name, and moments when Willow had questioned whether she was living in her sister's shadow. But they had faced each challenge together, with honesty and patience. They'd established new traditions while honoring old ones, created spaces in their home that acknowledged both the past and the present. "The Children's Museum called again," Willow mentioned, shifting Thomas to her shoulder. "They'd like you to reconsider their offer to name the new wing after Everly." 5 years earlier, Thackeray had established the Everly Blackwood Foundation for Twin Research and Support, inspired by the sisters' tragic separation. The foundation funded scientific studies on twin development and provided resources for families with twins, particularly those separated by circumstance. It had become one of the leading organizations in its field, with Willow serving as its medical advisor. "I've been thinking about that," Thackeray nodded. "It might be time. Montgomery's old enough to understand the importance of his mother's legacy." Inside the house, the antique grandfather clock chimed, signaling dinner time. As if summoned by the sound, The children abandoned their fairy garden and raced toward the terrace, Montgomery deliberately slowing his pace to let the twins overtake him. "Wash your hands before dinner," Willow called as they thundered past. "We know, Mama Willow," the twins chorused, while Montgomery rolled his eyes good-naturedly. Later that evening, after the younger children were asleep, Montgomery joined Thackeray in his study. At 14, the boy had begun asking more questions about his mother, seeking to establish a connection with the woman he barely remembered. "I found this today," Montgomery said, placing a weathered shoebox on his father's desk, "when I was looking for my old baseball glove in the attic." Thackeray opened the box to find a collection of Everly's personal items: concert ticket stubs, dried flowers pressed between wax paper, handwritten notes, and beneath them all, a small spiral notebook. "Her journal from the summer we met," Thackeray said softly, recognizing Everly's elegant handwriting immediately. "I didn't know she had kept one. Can we read it?" Montgomery asked hesitantly. Together, father and son spent the next hour poring over Everly's words from nearly 20 years earlier. Her initial impressions of the ambitious young pharmaceutical executive she'd met at a charity gala, her dreams for the future, her reflections on what made a meaningful life. Midway through the journal, a passage caught Thackeray's attention. "Sometimes I have the strangest feeling that I'm only half of something. Like somewhere, there's another part of me walking around in the world. Mom would call it new age nonsense, but it's stronger than déjà vu. It's like an echo inside me, calling to something I've lost. Last night, I dreamed about a girl with my face again. We were building sandcastles on a beach I've never seen, yet somehow recognized." Thackeray looked up to find Willow standing in the doorway, Thomas sleeping against her shoulder. "I thought you might want to see this," he said, extending the journal toward her. As Willow read the passage, tears gathered in her eyes. "Even separated, we were connected," she whispered. She felt it too. "Like I did," Montgomery said thoughtfully, "when I first saw you at the hospital. I just knew." The next morning, the family gathered for their annual pilgrimage to the beach where Everly had planned to build sandcastles with Montgomery before the accident. What had begun as a solemn ritual had evolved into a day of celebration, a family tradition honoring Everly's memory while creating new memories. This year was special, as it marked both the twins' 5th birthday and baby Thomas's first visit to the special place. The day was perfect: azure skies, gentle waves, and a soft breeze carrying the scent of salt and summer. While Thackeray and Montgomery taught the twins to fly a kite shaped like a dragon, Willow walked along the shoreline with Thomas, pointing out seagulls and collecting perfect shells to add to the family's growing collection at home. "Your big sister loved this beach," she told the infant softly. "She's part of why you're here today. Someday you'll understand what an amazing woman she was." From further up the beach, Montgomery called out excitedly, "Mama Willow! Dad, look what I found." He ran toward them, sand flying from his feet, clutching something in his hand. When he reached them, he opened his palm to reveal a perfectly formed sand dollar. "It's whole," he said breathlessly. "The tide just washed it right to my feet." Willow examined it with genuine wonder. "I've never found an unbroken one before. Mom used to say they were good luck," Montgomery explained to his confused little sisters. "That they're actually angel coins, gifts from people watching over us." Eleanor looked up at the sky thoughtfully. "Like Mommy Everly?" "Just like her," Thackeray confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. As the sun began to set, the family gathered their belongings and prepared to leave. Montgomery lingered behind, approaching Willow as she packed the beach toys. "I've been thinking," he said with the serious expression that always made him look so much like Thackeray. "When I grow up, I want to be a doctor. A pediatrician, maybe." Willow smiled, touched by his announcement. "Your mother would be very proud of that decision." "Both my mothers would," Montgomery corrected her gently. "I wouldn't have thought of it if you hadn't shown me what it means to help people." On the drive home, with the children sleeping in the back seat, Thackeray reached for Willow's hand across the console. "Happy. Completely," she affirmed, thinking of the family they'd built together, a family forged through loss and discovery, pain and healing. 10 years had passed since Everly's death, 8 since Willow had walked into their lives like a ghost from the past. What had begun as a shocking encounter had transformed into something none of them could have imagined: a second chance at family, at wholeness, at joy. As the car wound its way along the coastal road toward home, Willow gazed at the full moon illuminating the ocean beside them. Somewhere in that vast universe, she believed, Everly was watching, perhaps even guiding them. The twins separated in childhood had found each other after all, one through her living presence, one through the family she'd left behind. The circle was complete. The story, far from ending with tragedy, had evolved into something richer and more complex than any of them could have scripted, a testament to the enduring power of family bonds, both those we're born with and those we choose to create. And in the precious sleeping faces of the children in the back seat, Montgomery, Emma, Eleanor, and baby Thomas, the future stretched out before them, bright with possibility and alive with promise.